Hi, this is Lisa Guida. I'm the Director of Education here at the National Museum of Nuclear Science and History. Welcome to Nuclear Science Week Virtual. We hope you enjoy this series, and we look forward to seeing you in the museum.
Hi guys, this is Mr. Dave from the National Museum of Nuclear Science and History, and I am here to show you a little bit about radiation and some of the devices we use to detect radiation. This one here is a Geiger counter, as is this one. As you can tell, this one's a little bit older version, and it's the kind that you see in the movies where they're going, you know, like this, and then they don't want to stand by that big old glowing barrel. Okay, now some of the things that you'll see in the movies are not always accurate, so you'll want to bear that in mind, but this one here is the one that we're going to be using for this demonstration. It is the Rattler 50. It again is an older version, just not quite as old as that one there. You'll see that it's got a screen here. It is not a touch screen. You can touch it, but it doesn't do anything. This one has switches and buttons, and it's got this little screen here, and behind that screen is our dosimeter that is going to actually detect the radiation. It's going to read it out here, and it's also going to read it out audibly so we can hear it. We're going to talk briefly about our three different types of radiation. Okay, one is alpha radiation, one is beta radiation, and the other is gamma radiation. Let's start off with alpha radiation. Now, alpha radiation in the nuclear scale is a big, huge particle, okay? It is the nucleus. It is a helium nucleus. It has 2 protons, 2 neutrons, and it's not big enough that we can see, but on a nuclear scale, it's massive. Okay, so it has a hard time going through the atmosphere. It can't travel very far, and so it can't travel through very many materials. And so we're going to demonstrate that by seeing this little alpha emitter. This is Americium 541, and we are going to see if we can detect the radiation off of this thing with this Geiger counter. Now, in order to use this Geiger counter, you got to turn it on. I already hear radiation. Well, I don't hear radiation, but I hear the Geiger counter detecting radiation. I hear that little chirp. Now that chirp sound means that it has detected the decay of an atom that has put off radiation. So that isotope, that unbalanced isotope, that unbalanced protons and neutrons, when they decay, they give you a daughter isotope and radiation. So this radiation that we're hearing here, this is not coming from my face. This is not coming from any of these items. This is called background radiation. That's the radiation that is around us all the time. And it's different no matter where you are. So when you're measuring, if you want to get an accurate measurement, someone who is trying to really tell how radioactive something is will first get a background reading, meaning they'll let this thing run to see how much radiation they're dealing with just in their environment before they test to see how radioactive something is. So let's test to see how radioactive our little alpha emitter. Remember that alpha is 2 protons, 2 neutrons. It's a helium nucleus. We're going to see how radioactive this thing is. Now, we're also going to be able to tell that it is an alpha from this test, because remember, like I said, it has a hard time traveling through the atmosphere, and it has a hard time traveling through materials. So let's see how far we can be before it starts really detecting the radiation. Now remember, we have that background radiation, so we haven't heard it yet. Now that number that you're hearing there, that's really nothing to worry about. That's not a huge amount of radiation. We're not in any danger. Now if it were to start really going, then we would think differently. But so we're going to see how far we have to be before this starts detecting the radiation. That's still background radiation. It's still not picking it up. But now, that's a lot of radiation. Yeah, that is a lot, right? Now, you may think, well, then why are you holding it? Because, again, this is alpha radiation. This is an alpha emitter. That radiation can't go very far. And also, it has a hard time traveling through things. Now, we have this other scientific piece of equipment here that scientists have been using for ages. It's called paper. And so we're going to test and see if that paper can shield us from this alpha emitter. Now remember, we have that background radiation. It's pretty effectively stopping that radiation. If we were to move the paper, yeah, then you would hear that radiation, and then if we shield it, yeah. So that alpha radiation, that particle is so big it has a hard time traveling through even this piece of paper. Because of that, it can't travel through the dead skin cells on our body. And so even though this is a very high energy, it's putting out a lot of radiation, it's not any danger. Now if we were to ingest it, it'd be different because it has little sharp things. No, also because that alpha would not have, we wouldn't be able to protect it from, or protect ourselves from it with our skin. So we wouldn't want to ingest that emitter. They'll do different types of ingestion of radiation for testing and treatment, things like that. But this one here is not that type, okay? This, even though you saw how radioactive it is, we're pretty glad that this is not something that would cause any damage, because it's something that we have around us all the time. In fact, if you look around, okay, then you will probably see this in the room you're in. Now, I don't know what I'm looking for. Well, let me show you. This guy. Yeah, this is actually the element from a smoke detector. It works on a little bit different, but the similar principle. When something comes in the way, it no longer is detecting that, so a particulate, and so it sounds the alarm. And this radiation right here has saved thousands and thousands of lives because they use it in a smoke detector. Yeah, and so this radiation, even though it's very radioactive, okay, this alpha can't go through our skin because it's that big helium particle. Let's move on to beta radiation. This is our beta emitter. There is a little bitty bit of strontium-90 in here, and that is going to give us our beta radiation. Now the difference between alpha and beta is, while alpha is that big old 2 protons and 2 neutrons, beta radiation is just an electron, okay? So it's an electron, so it can travel a little further through the atmosphere because it's not going to bounce off as much stuff and be absorbed by as many things. And it can also penetrate some of the materials that our alpha emitter cannot. So let's check out our beta emitter, okay? So we're going to turn on our Geiger counter. We're going to see first distance. Now, when do we start detecting? Now, you've noticed it's gone up already, right? So it's able to travel further through the atmosphere. Okay. Now, if you were listening very carefully and you know, really watching and doing all the math, you'd notice that this one is not putting out quite as much, but we're still getting a lot of that chirping, okay? Now, let's see if our beta emitter can penetrate paper. It's doing it. Some of it is being absorbed and you know, bounced off this paper here, but we're still able to penetrate that paper. So our beta emitter, we know that this is beta because it can penetrate that cardstock, okay? Whereas that alpha had a hard time. This beta is able to penetrate that, so we know that it's a beta emitter because of the distance and because of the materials that it can pass through. So we say, okay, well, maybe it's a gamma. Let's check and see. This is a sheet of lead. Okay? Remember, we still have that little electron particle, and so we're going to get this sheet of lead and we're going to see if our beta can penetrate that lead. Nope. Yeah, nothing. Okay? Remember, we have those clicks, that's our background radiation, but this beta is not able to penetrate that lead, and so that's why we know that this is in fact a beta emitter. Okay? So it's not able to penetrate the lead, but it is able to penetrate the paper. So now we're going to switch it up, and we're going to check out our rock star of radiation, gamma rays, right? Gamma rays are the things that bombarded the Hulk and turned him into this big green thing every time he gets angry, and that were radiated this little spider, and so when it bit Peter Parker, he got wonderful hair and great abs and was able to climb up walls and shoot. None of that is real. Yeah, none of that is real. Yeah, but it does affect your cells and things, and so they call this one, you know, gamma rays, And it is the rock star because it doesn't have a particle. It's a ray. It is energy. So instead of having that big nucleus or the little electron, this has pure energy. And because of that, it's able to travel further and it's able to go through more materials. So let's give this one a shot. We're going to turn it on. Now you are going to notice that this one here is not going to give us as crazy of a reading as our alpha because we wanted a source that wasn't going to put off a whole lot of gamma radiation. We wanted a safe level. And so we're going to see here. Now you can see that it has picked up. Remember I said there's not as much there. It's not going to give us as many of those chirps as this one, but we're hearing it. Okay, and this is gamma radiation. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and see if we can shield it, of course, first with our paper. Nothing, right? Because it's just energy. There is no particle. Then we'll try with our lead. We'll see if it can penetrate that lead. It's able to go right through that lead. You can still hear that clicking. That didn't even slow it down. Okay? So you say, okay, well, how do you protect yourself from this gamma radiation? Well, you use more lead, right? So we put a whole bunch of lead in there. Let's see if this stops it. It's still higher than the background. You can tell even with this many sheets of this lead, this emitter is still able to penetrate and make it to that Geiger counter. Okay, and so we've done some very informal testing in the classroom with kids, and really it takes about 26 of these sheets to shield this effectively. So you can shield that energy, but it takes a lot of material, and this lead is very dense. And so that's why they'll use it in shielding. In fact, you have probably used lead to shield yourself from radiation before. It's a different type of radiation. It's X-rays, and you have probably used one of these. Yeah, this is that big old heavy apron that they put on you when you lay down in the dentist chair, and you're like, oh, it's so nice. And then they put those pokey X shields in there so they can get the X-rays of your teeth. Now we'll use this because it's able to slow down that radiation that is coming toward your soft organs, okay? So this is shielding, okay? Different types of shielding can tell us different materials, right? Can tell us different types of radiation. So if radiation can penetrate the shielding very easily and can travel a further distance, we figure, well, that's probably gamma radiation. If it can't penetrate some of your heavier shielding, but it penetrates your lighter shielding, then it's probably beta radiation, and it can travel a little bit further. If it can't even go through a piece of paper, then we're probably talking alpha radiation. And the technology here, this Geiger counter that we're using, is something that has been around for a good long while now, and is something that we use to keep us safe in these types of situations. Now, you and I are not in a place where we're being affected by huge amounts of radiation on a regular basis. We are being affected by that background radiation. But if you were in an environment where you were exposed or planning to be exposed, you would want to use a device that was very tried and true. There's no firmware to update on this. This is not relying on the internet connection. This is just something that is going to say, hey, that's a lot of radiation, or that's not a lot of radiation. All right, so we saw how we've got that alpha, beta, and gamma radiation. I have here with me, this is Charlotte. You may recognize her from our Breaking Boredom Oh Yeah videos.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. And she's going to help me with this demonstration, demonstrating a little bit kind of a visualization of what you saw with those Geiger counters and with our different shielding and with our different types of radiation. So we'll start it off with alpha radiation. So with alpha radiation, that little green piece of paper that we had, we're going to imagine that this... Imagination. That this is that green piece of paper, okay? So what is this?
That green piece of paper.
No, this is a mesh with a whole bunch of holes in it.
Alright.
but we're imagining. Imagination. Yeah. So we're imagining that this is like that piece of paper. Now this here that she has symbolizes our alpha radiation. Now you remember that alpha radiation is a helium nucleus, right? Which is 2 protons and 2 neutrons, which I just had, and then Charlotte here said, well, shouldn't they all be in one lump? Because I had them all separate. Yes, she is correct. Yeah, that nucleus would all be...
So we spent 10 minutes trying to tie them together.
Yeah, trying to tie those balloons together. Not easy, not easy. So
Not easy.
All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna show that alpha radiation and that shielding. Okay. Now the first thing about that alpha radiation, if you remember, it cannot go very far. Okay. So if I were right here, would you be able to hit me with that alpha radiation? Go ahead and throw it. I'll be okay. Yeah, no problem, right? So that alpha radiation can travel short distances, but as you can imagine, if I were way over there and she tried to throw those balloons, throw them real far, throw them all the way real far, throw them at me over here. Yeah, okay, not happening. So
Balloons don't go that far.
they don't go that far. And it's the same principle with that alpha radiation. While it's got enough energy, or while it's fast moving, it hits that atmosphere and it slows it down and it can't travel very long distances. Alpha radiation, okay?
Alpha radiation.
So we're gonna try shielding that alpha radiation. She was able to hit me no problem when I was close, right? Now this is what? What was this? Do you remember?
Our green piece of paper.
No, this is still a net, but we're imagination, yeah. So we're imagining that this is in fact our green piece of paper. Now, as you can see, go ahead and throw that at me. Yeah, there is no way in the world that alpha radiation is going to go through this net, okay?
That green piece of paper.
Yes, this green piece of paper. Okay, so we know that alpha radiation is that helium nucleus, 2 protons, 2 neutrons, symbolized by our balloons here, that Charlotte said we should tie together, which we very well should. For some reason, our yellow one is massive. I don't know why, but yeah. So this is our alpha radiation. So now we're going to switch to beta radiation.
Beta radiation.
Beta radiation. All right, so let's switch to beta radiation. So, beta radiation. Beta radiation, if you could hand me one of those, is symbolized, in this case, by ping pong ball.
Ping pong ball.
Right, because beta radiation was 1 electron, if you remember. Now, this is much smaller than that alpha radiation, right? And it'll fly farther through the atmosphere, okay? So, that beta has no problem going close. Now, just like you threw those balloons at my face, I love you.
I love you too.
Okay, so we're going to try without the shielding, nice up close, okay? She's going to see if that beta particle, which is that 1 electron, can travel this much distance. Go ahead. It had no problem traveling that much distance, so you can move a little bit closer here. And so, I love you too, yeah. Okay, so if we had that beta particle and we wanted to see if it would travel a farther distance, do you think it would travel farther than the balloon?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So if I were over here, about like we were with the balloon, can you hit me from there? Woo! Yeah, no problem, right? That beta can travel farther distance. Now, this little ping pong ball would not go, across a football field because of its weight in comparison to its mass. But it'll go, in comparison to its size, but it'll go a little ways, okay? It's pretty low velocity because it's lightweight. But this symbolizes that electron, okay? So this is our piece of paper, right? Piece of paper, okay? This is our electron. Our beta radiation is only 1 electron. Okay, so it's smaller, it's faster, and it can travel longer distances, and it stings a little bit more when it bounces off your bald head. So this one here, we're going to see as we can kind of test out here. It goes right through that net, no problem. But come this way a little bit. Would every single one, if you were to throw multiple of them, would every single one go through the net?
Probably not.
Probably not, right? Just like we saw that paper slowed down that beta radiation, but it didn't stop it. So if you were to throw several of these electrons at my face, then we would see that some of them may go through and some of them may not. So we're going to try our shielding with our paper, all right? So go ahead.
Hold on.
Now, a couple of them came through and they got me in the shirt, right? Some of it went through, but some of it was blocked by the shielding. And that's what happens with beta radiation, if it's trying to go through something like that sheet of paper. Now we're going to take our imagination a step further, and we're going to imagine that this is that sheet of lead, okay? Now, the lead was a lot denser, right? A lot tighter material. There's a lot more material there, okay? A lot greater mass in that material. And so, is that if we, let's just try one because it's not going to be that, go ahead, get a handful. There you go. We're going to see if that, if this is an effective shield against that beta radiation. And what do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is no way. Now, if
Would
you
this be another green piece of paper, or what would this be?
No, this would be a sheet of lead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a sheet of lead. So while this was our paper, okay, this was a sheet of lead. All right? So, now we're going to step up to gamma rays, okay? Gamma rays. Gamma rays.
Gamma ray.
Gamma rays. All right, now, gamma rays, like we talked about, is that rock star. There is no particle. It is just a ray. It is just a energy like this light. Now, it's different than this light, but we're using this as an example. This was what? What was this?
Piece of lead.
Sheet of lead, right? Now, that sheet of lead, if you look, is that light able to come through and still shine? Do you still see little reflections on this surface right here? Yeah, you can still see that light is able to penetrate this, just like those gamma rays are able to penetrate a little bit of that lead. Now, I have more lead. Yay!
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 Okay, so if we have more lead, is that light still going to penetrate? Yes. Okay, but what if, imagination, we had more and more and more and more? Would eventually you be able to effectively block that radiation or shield that radiation?
I think so.
I think so. Yeah, so if we had enough, you would be able to effectively shield that radiation. Just like we saw when you had 2 sheets of lead, it didn't stop that emitter that we had. Alpha radiation, which is symbolized by the balloons. We have beta radiation, symbolized by this little ping pong ball, which is 1 electron. Okay, and then we have gamma radiation, which is just that light, right? That's shining through. Shining through. Okay, so alpha, beta, gamma radiation. Alpha is a helium nucleus. How many protons?
2.
How many neutrons?
2.
Good, making that 1 helium nucleus. How many electrons in beta radiation? 1. How many particles in gamma radiation? None. Yeah, yeah, it's just energy.
Trick question.
It was a trick question. Good. All right, so thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys for sharing your time during this Nuclear Science Week. And as we always say at the end of all of our videos, don't forget to
Wash your hands.